Welcome to Podfic Galore. I'm your horrible online reader, Goldskythe. I read out loud fanfictions for you busy bees, free of charge and no strings attached. Today I will continue reading the Silmarillion / Lord of the Rings fic by Bloodwinged Blackbird from Archive of Our Own called And Now Each Night I Count the Stars. I hope you can at least try to enjoy my voice, and I will try my best for you with the equipment available to me. Note, this fic is rated explicit. On with the show. And now each night I count the stars. Chapter 22. Muglor came back to himself in a too bright room, motes of dust sparking dancing patterns in the air above him. Beyond, there was a ceiling, whitewashed. He could see a place where there had been a leak, stained golden like old tea. It was raftered with heavy dark beams, all carved with serpents and vines and flames, and they writhed and twisted within the wood. He closed his eyes again. Blackbird? There. It was that voice again. He had heard it before, in the long nightmare of nauseous pain, of burning, of drowning, of thunder, and shaking ground. He could remember cloth, rough against his cheek, arms around him, the sweat, hoarse, dust, scent of travel filling his nose. He would twitch and choke, and the arms would hold tighter, and the voice would whisper, Blackbird, stay. But he would slip away again, back beneath the great careless waves that wanted to drown his voice forever and ever. There was a bird singing, somewhere. Beyond a window, maybe. Maybe there were sun-drenched fields, trees festooned with bright green leaves, maybe even a sky. The shadows of the ceiling shifted again, went golden, then grey. Cool, silent night. Had someone asked him a question? No! Muglor! They were holding him down, and they were hurting him. They were drowning him, feeding him poisons, opening him up and coring him like an apple, putting him back together wrong and empty. Can you— No, hold him. Muglor, we won't hurt you. It was a lie. He did not need to know who, where, when. He was in order to know that. The room was full of fog, and the figures that emerged from it to hold him down, to pour clawing potions down his throat, had no faces, and the voices were lies, because they belonged to people that he loved. Ah! Shh, shh, they soothed. Can you hold his shoulders? I don't want to bind him, but he'll harm himself. Himself? I'm sorry, Glorfindel, keep your hands away from his mouth next time. Then find another way to give him Poppy. The fog had turned to smoke, sweet and heavy, and then there was a weight across his shoulders. Quiet now, Blackbird. And it was that voice again. The one who had come for him. Oh, he was drowning again. But it wasn't so frightening anymore. It was cool and quiet, and so dark. He reached out as he fell. You should rest. He knew that voice, but it was an uneasy, fearful sort of knowing. He was safe, though, because it wasn't talking to him. No. Muggle was holding something, fingers wrapped tight around something precious. It shifted in his grip, and he was afraid that he would drop it, so he held on tighter, and could remember why he thought it should hurt. Blackbird, my fingers. Ah, I see. He was singing, Elrond. Not aloud, but I could feel it while we rode. And his fingers, they would move like he had a harp. Like a dog running in its sleep. It was a hand. A hand held tight in his, and it squeezed his fingers as the voice spoke. I wonder what he is dreaming. The other was silent for a long time. I don't know, but I could hear it. He stopped. Not with ears, you understand. But singing, for us, it is part of the healing, part of the music that sings the world into being, and it is sung anew at every moment, always, all of being, all that is, singing together. I hear part of it sometimes. I try to sing it, my own very small part, but I'm not a singer. He is. Maybe he remembers that at least. There was a sound of fabric, a creak of chair. I know better than to ask you leave, Dunadan, but try to rest at least. A heavy, breathing silence followed the closing of the door. Did you hear that, Blackbird? The voice said. We should listen to him, I think. There was a hand in his when he had last vomited, gasping and shivering upon the shores of consciousness. His throat burned. He stared at the ceiling above, shadowed rafters carved with birds and flowers that seemed to move in the guttering lamplight. The fingers clutched between his flexed and stretched. Blackbird, do you know me? Oh, but that was a hard question, wasn't it? He turned his gaze towards the voice and found green eyes, sad as grass in the rain, a ruddy beard, a sunburned nose, a voice that called him Blackbird. He did not, but neither did he let go of the hand. Water? Nodding was too much strength, but the man understood. A strong arm lifted him, gentle behind his shoulders. There was pain, but it was a distant thing, not his own. He had nothing. No voice, barely even a body, only eyes, a hand, and a throat full of flames. The water was in a glass, cold against lips that barely felt like his. It was hard to make them obey, and water spilled down his chin. He was greedy, and drank as if he missed the drowning, as if it would quench the flames in his throat, but he choked and coughed, the flames burning higher, water dribbling from his mouth and nose. Shh, shh, said the voice. Not so fast. We'll not run out, I promise. The glass now empty, he sagged against the arm that held him. Rest now, Blackbird. The voice slipped from his grasp then, left him hollow. What kind of bird could he be, if he could neither fly nor sing? He learned that Elrond was the one he knew. He also learned that knowing was no simple thing, but made of claws and teeth of uneasy love and guilt and blame. He looked tired, this Elrond, his eyes shadowed and his mouth drawn tight, but he was gentle when he came, and placed a cool hand on his forehead, and tugged at his eyelids to peer closely at him. Maglor, can you speak? Maglor? Was that his name? He seemed already to have more names than he needed, and there were more, hovering like spectres at the edge of his waking. Could he just be Blackbird for a while longer? You should rest, was what Maglor meant to say, but something carried his voice away. I will, said Elrond, as if he had heard him anyway. Something touched his mind, a tentative thing that asked to sing to him, that said that he could listen, that he could sleep, that he was safe and warm and loved. Maglor wanted to tell him that he didn't have to lie, but he couldn't find the words. When he surfaced again, it was the full daylight and pain. There was a cloying sweetness behind his eyes that spoke of the waiting wisps of a drug. He lifted a hand to shield himself from the sun that pounded upon him, ringing through the 2-3 curtains of his eyelids. Too bright? Maglor flinched at the sound. Too bright, too loud, too much. It was the man again, the one with the sad green eyes, still beside him. He moved away for a moment and rustled some fabric, plunging the room back into cool darkness. Maglor could hear him breathing, loud and rough in the quiet room. Are you in pain? Maglor didn't answer, lost for a moment in the shard of sunlight that still crept through a gap in the curtains. I suppose that was a foolish question. Let me try another. He leaned over so that Maglor could see him. Do you know where you are? In Bladris, he said, but somehow no sound would come. He tried again, until he woke the burning in his throat, but still he could not make no sound over a wheezing whisper. Good. That's good, said the man, squeezing his fingers. Don't worry yourself with speaking. It will come in time. Maklar didn't believe him. He should have had questions, maybe. Should have cared how he had come to be here, but he remembered enough to put it together. Someone had come for him, had found him, and brought him here. The only mystery was why they bothered. You? He settled for mouthing the word, staring at that face that watched him with such painful expectancy. My name is Halbaran. Why? The man said nothing, just squeezed his fingers and stood. I'll go find Elrond for you. Elrond returned, all gentle seeking hands and soothing voice. Arwen was with him, moon bright enough that he had to close his eyes when she helped him to sit and to drink the sticky, bitter drink that Elrond gave him. She stayed beside him while Elrond checked the dressing on his back and spread something cold upon his wounds. He stared ahead of him, at the place where his left foot should have been, changing the blanket to match the right. Elrond's hands paused in the work as Maklar tucked the blanket aside to look at what remained of his leg, his thigh ending in a white dressing where his knee should have been. I'm sorry, Elrond said. I had hoped to save the knee, but the infection had gone too far. Maklar shook his head and let himself sag against Arwen's arm as Elrond replaced the dressings. After a moment, he spoke again. There, you can lie down again. No. He managed the sound this time. Barely more than a whisper, but it was something. The effort of holding himself upright made him shake, but he did not want to lie helpless any longer. Arwen pawed the cushions behind him for support. Can you tell me how this happened? Elrond had begun to remove the dressing from Maklar's leg. It was hard to look at, and harder still to look away. Not yet. There was something in his chest that was sucking all the sound into it. A hungry hole. A choking, sobbing void. I'm sorry, Elrond said again, softer this time. I know you don't want my words of comfort, but there are some here that you can speak to when you are ready. He swayed against the pillows, his vision growing dim. He was tired. How was he so tired? It's the puppy, murmured Arwen. He hadn't spoken, had he? Oh well, his mind was already leaking, bleeding like a wound, his walls in ruins, his skin in tatters. There wasn't anything they hadn't seen. Ah, you old crow, Elrond said. Don't worry so much. I don't go poking around without an invitation anymore. You taught me that lesson well enough. We need to change this dressing, then you can sleep again. How about it? He managed, as Arwen helped to settle him back against the cushions. My father sent him to rest. You'll see him again soon. He closed his eyes and shook his head. No. Who? Elrond cleared his throat. What do you recall? He came for me. He did? That's right. Why? There was a pause. A glance flung between father and daughter. You should rest, I think. We'll speak of it tomorrow. Halbarad was back when he awoke, sitting in a chair beside Maklar's bed, elbow propped onto the arm of the chair, chin propped in his hand as he watched something beyond the window. The birds were singing again, and Maklar found it hard not to imagine it as mockery. He must have shifted, because Halbarad shook himself and turned from the window, his face drawn and weary. There were creases at the corners of his eyes, lines at the side of his mouth that made him look as if he should smile more often. How do you feel? He asked. Awake, replied Maklar. Finally. His voice was a whisper scarce louder than breathing, the room too big and too full of light, Halbarad's eyes too full of questions. Do you want to sit up? It took Halbarad's help, Maklar leaning against his shoulder while he helped him to sit and arranged his pillows just so. Then he went back to his seat, straightening his sleeves. Maklar caught a glimpse of a deep purple bruise staining the skin of his wrist. What happened? Hmm? Oh, you are not an easy patient, smuggler. Blackbird. Why do you call me that? I should get Elrond, Halbarad said, his face an utterly unconvincing mask of indifference. No, tell me why you look at me like you know me. The words came harsh when he tried to put any force behind them. He was angry, suddenly. Angry that they thought they could coddle him now, that they didn't understand that it was too late to protect him, that there was nothing left of him to protect. Halbarad stared at him, and Makler could see the way his jaw tightened as he sat again. Elrond wanted to wait, until you were stronger. We hoped that you would remember. Tell me. Halbarad raked his fingers through his thin, coppery hair, rubbed at his eyes with his knuckles, and stared out of the window again. Makler followed his gaze to where wind was stirring the pines. We had been traveling together when we could. We met in Bree. Do you remember coming back to Rivendell? The first time? Yes. The sons of Elrond. Makler stopped. They had found him somehow, and brought him back. Had it been an inn? He wrapped his arms around himself, suddenly cold, uncertain. His head was all foggy again, and he dug his fingernails into his skin, hoping it would clear it away. Who are you? Halbarad turned from the window, an unbearable softness about his eyes as he spread his hands, defeated. I love you. I'm sorry. You didn't like me to say it, but I did. I do. I can't help it. He looked back to the window. I know it's all different now. I know that you don't. That I should have. I know that it's different. That's all. Did I love you? Halbarad started at that and looked down at his hands, clenched in his lap. Tell me, Makler says, voice cracking and grinding, the fire in his throat rising up to choke him up again. The fire in his throat rising up to choke him again. You said that you did. Later, it would occur to Makler that he should have asked if Halbarad had believed him. Elrond came again after that, his cool, gentle hands, warm cups of honeyed teas for his throat, gentle voice. There were stars, a bright night beyond the window of his room. Makler hated it, deserved none of it, was not even certain that he believed any of it. What else have I forgotten? Elrond did not reply, looking away from the question to arrange the things on the table beside the bed, lamplight glinting on the rolls of clean linen, the little jars of unguents. Makler stared at him, at the crease between his eyebrows. He remembered that, for it seemed to deepen whenever he spoke to Makler. He could remember visiting Imladris each winter, remembered a gift of apricots, a ride with Arwen. There was a veil between him and the memory, and he couldn't quite conjure the feelings that had gone along with it, but it was there, even if everything still felt somehow flattened, unreal, as a skillful copy of the world he had left, the strange gaps the only evidence of its manufacture. He gripped the sheets, twisting them between his hands until his knuckle bones stood out pale. I can't know that for you, Makler. I'm sorry. This cannot be real. Elrond looked up at that, eyes widening before he schooled his expression again. I am quite certain that I am real. That is what you would say if you were not. Let us entertain that. Do you think I am not real? Or that I am not me? Makler considered. A dream would not hurt so. Or he did not think it would. But his every wish, fulfilled, a convincing ruse to offer him salvation, only to snatch it away from him again. That seemed like a thing that Sauron could conjure. His brother hadn't liked to speak of his time in Sauron's company, But he did not need to, for Makler to see the way that his brother had looked at them all after, the way he had braced himself against the claws of hope, held himself back from them. Elrond must have accepted that an answer would not come. Can you talk more, or does your throat pain you? Yes, to both. How did you come to be here? Elrond knew all this, surely. You sent me. He watched Elrond's face, not certain what reaction would make him believe. Do you expect me to believe that you did not know what Saruman wanted from me? Elrond had never been a good liar, despite Maklar's best efforts. So the confusion was real, but so was the guilt. So it was Saruman, after all. We wondered. Maklar scoffed. You wondered? I will tell you what I wonder. Why did your sons come for me at all? Do you expect me to believe that this miracle of timing is mere happenstance? That good fortune has finally found me after leaving me to rot in Barad-dûr for... Something caught in his throat, lungs burning with the effort of so much speech. He coughed until his vision went black at the edges. When he at last stopped, Elrond passed him a damp cloth. Would you like me to tell you what we know? Maklar nodded, pressing the cool cloth to his lips. The first we knew was from Halbarad. You sent him a letter at midsummer, through Lady Galadriel's couriers. He still has it, I'm certain. All we knew was that Saruman had summoned you, and that you were traveling to Isengard, but hoped to return by midwinter. We were worried, so my sons went to Isengard and were told that you had not appeared. Why? So we have gathered. They searched, but all that they found convinced them that you had been lost. There was something else there. Not quite a lie, but close. Elrond looked away from Maklar. All my life, you have been, a large part, successful in shielding your mind. So much so that I truly thought that you had perhaps died when Beleriand was drowned. But then you returned, and I had no more sense of you than before, and I understood how high you had built your walls. And when you disappeared, I looked again, and I found not blankness, but darkness. I believed, well, I imagine you know what I believed. I was wrong, of course, and I don't expect to be forgiven for it. I cannot explain it, but this spring passed, the darkness lifted, and I could hear your song. There. It is not all my tale to tell. He folded his hands into his sleeves of his robe and was silent, watching the stars beyond the window, a muscle in his jaw working in the golden lamplight. They moved me. I don't know when. I was in Barad-dûr itself, but then I was back in Inasporku. Elrond nodded. That may be enough to explain it. Saruman wanted the Ithil stone. He said that the White Council was in agreement. That he would send your sons if I would not go. My sons, said Elrond, go to Minas Morgul. And you believe this? They went almost so far. Seeking you. Yes, you sent them to retrieve a thing of little value, truly. A smile cracked on his lips. So, you see, I could not take them from you, not when I could go. Oh, well then, let it not be said that the sons of Fëanor are selfish. Elrond's voice rang out, mocking him. Maglor, did you think that I, with the life I have led, would willingly put any of my family in such danger if I could prevent it? His voice shook. That I would spend either of my sons on a fool's errand when I already grieve for my daughter? When I have already failed my wife? Your sons came from me! That was too much. Something tore in his throat, and Maklor spat blood onto the white sheets. That was as much your halvbard's doing as mine. Elladan and Elrohir would not have let a friend go alone, and I had been powerless to stop them even if I had wished to. If you do not see the difference between yourself and the Seeing Stones, then I know not what to say. He took a breath. The Council commanded no such thing. The Council has never made any plans to recover those stones, nor to use them. Saruman has the Orthanc stone. Would you have me believe that you did not know this? Elrond blinked, as if he had been struck. I did not know. He has never spoken of it. Has he used it? He says he has not, but... He lies, finished Elrond. Maglor, believe me or not, but this is the truth. We knew nothing of Saruman's plotting. He told us that he wished for your help with some records, but that you did not come to Orthanc. He wanted us to believe you dead. You did, and I will bear that guilt until my end. There, that is the truth. Believe it if you wish. Punish me if you must. I was far too willing to believe that you had abandoned us again. I should have kept you closer. Sought you sooner. He stood and moved to the door. I am sorry, Maglor, he said. My father would have... That made Elrond pause. What? My father would have sent any of us. Elrond sat down and pinched the bridge of his nose. I expect he would have. But I would not have. And neither would you. He reached out and grabbed Maklor's forearm, shaking it. Oh, you foolish old crow. Was all this... You really believed that you were saving us, didn't you? It wasn't the only reason, but it was the only one he wanted anyone to know. You needn't mock me for it. Maglor, it would seem that you don't feel this way, but for myself, for your halberd, likely for many others, your life is worth much more than a stone. Maglor had centuries of evidence to prove him wrong. A whole mountain of bodies that would have still lived, but for him. Wrongs that he would never be able to undo. Elrond's hand was still on his wrist. Long fingers, smooth calluses. Maglor had taught them to play the harp. Elrond and Elros both. He taught them other things too, it would seem. He wondered how long it had taken Elrond to unlearn that particular lesson. Do you believe it now? For yourself? Elrond shrugged. Sometimes. For a long time, I had let others believe it for me, but I learned. He pulled away, squeezing Maklor's fingers. Do you want me to leave the lamp? No. End of chapter 22. Stay tuned.